Meow by Artur Maszczyk. In the sprawling urban housing environment of the 21st century lurks a breed of animal that carries an amount of sass, utmost royalty, and an unhinged resentment for all life so grand it pierces the heavens till present day. Cats. Or for a more explicit description, me. I was born in a humble litter of 5. All of my 4 blood brothers were taken in, one by one, and scrambled across what I can only assume the globe, but I was left behind. I never was engaged with the idea of humans placing their dirty, bare, fleshy hands upon my soft, delicate fur, so I returned their bestial acts with a hiss and the point of my claws. I was very lonely at that time, but not for long, fortunately. She was quite an elderly woman, and even though I did my whole ritual of hissing and scratching, she still placed her wrinkly hand upon my head. The malaise welling up inside me almost made me puke out my hairballs, but even though it felt moist and coarse and disgusting, it felt good, really. I'll take this one. Her voice sounded gravelly, but trembled at the same time. And thus I was taken to my new home. It was a small apartment, every corner populated by a potted plant. The walls and ceiling were painted in a pale light green, and— Sweet Sphinx! What is that? It was black and round, and it was moving at me at unimaginable speeds. Its roar reverberated in my ears over and over. I dashed in between the seam and the couch and felt paralysed by the horror and loathing. I composed myself now and was ready for battle. I dashed out from the couch and prepared for a battle to define my gladiatorial skills. But as my owner bent down and stretched her finger to the beast and pressed its back, it let out a cold, robotic voice. Power off. What a despicable sound. My owner looked at me, chuckling. Well, for one, I would be as jolly as her if I had the chance to tame a beast like that. From that moment, I knew my new home would be abnormal, to say the least. After a few months in my new home, I grew accustomed to the specifications one of my species should follow when living in such a high-fashion, though isolated residence that was my owner's home. She throws a toy mouse, I feverishly chase after it, always go to the toilet in the magic poop-disappearing box, always reject the crunchy food, etc. One day, I was minding my own business when I felt the sensation of those moist, coarse hands once more wrap around my body in a vice-like fashion, like I was prime-time coiling material for an African python. Is she going to eat me? Did she just pamper me to just devour me whole and gag out the hair chunks? These thoughts zipped past in my head, back and forth like a fierce tennis match. But thankfully the woman just placed me in her lap. I live another day. You know, you've been such a great friend ever since Marcia died. My grandchildren are talking about placing me in a retirement home, but I said I'll see if this kitten thing would work out. And it did. Well, I did need to move from our cottage to this apartment to cope. So isolation can be quite an issue, considering the circumstances. Well, you're here to save my day from boredom and isolation. She bent down and kissed me on the forehead, my neck retracted like an arrow between a bowstring. I probably was still too in shock to hear what else she said, but as I came to, I heard the words, "My little hero." Since then, I became way more protective of the apartment and my owner, always keeping a watchful eye on everything that could pose a threat. I cared for these things, and I meant to keep them protected and happy. But as one day would have it, my owner would always lock me out of her room when she went to bed, but this night she left her door open, and when I trudged through to see her, she was just lying there, unmoving. A feeling of absolute horror smothered me. I pranced onto the bed and desperately battered my paws against her body, shouting until my throat was sore and hoarse. All the thoughts that withered my proud stance over all the previous days came flooding back. What will I do if I lose her? Were all the days we experienced for nothing to her? I continued to batter her with the distilled hope that she would wake up and take care of me and love me, and we'd continue to live our lives in peace. She's the only one that ever showed me kindness. I can't lose her. I can't lose her. Tears were welling in my eyes. Now my batters gradually became weaker and stopped. I knew it was over. I looked up at the ceiling and let out a grieving wail that echoed through not only the room but the whole floor. I didn't know why I did it, but it felt less like I was trying to vacate my sadness, but I was shoveling more misery into me, coming to terms with the fact that she was gone. I was completely lost. Until I felt a keen, moist and coarse sensation. I dashed my head to the left and saw my owner there, alive and petting my head when she murmured, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I worry you? I had quite the late night. I took one of those sleeping pills. Would you like some breakfast?" I was flustered, angered and shocked all at the same time. But yes, as the noted hero of the apartment, I would indeed like breakfast.